Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, Raul Laughlin here on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And the program is archived on YouTube, and you can easily find it there. Today on the Corner Bookstore, we're going to be talking with a good friend of mine here in the Houston area, Raul Herrera. He, like me, a Vietnam veteran. He accepted an invitation way back when, ended up spending, I think, about 4 years in the military, roughly. And he had an interesting experience over in Vietnam as part of the Swift Boat community. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit, but also more importantly, since this is the Corner Bookstore, we're going to be talking to him about his journey as an author. And so with that being said, Raul, please join me.
Good morning, Red. Thank you for having me.
Anytime whatsoever, you know that. You got an invitation to Vietnam way back, about 65 or something like that? Almost too long to think.
It was actually 67 when I went to Vietnam. So I joined the military, the Navy, in 1965, September of 65. And a few years later, a year and a half or so, I had orders to combat boat training, PCF crew training, which is Patrol Craft Fast, commonly known as a Swift Boat. And so we trained in Coronado, California, across the bay from San Diego. And then marching orders went ahead to Swift Boats in Vietnam, Swift Boat duty.
Okay, just to give our audience a little bit of an idea what a Swift Boat is, rough order of magnitude, how long is it? How wide is it? How much water does it take below the surface? And how many crew members are on there?
Well, when I tell people about Swift Boats, they automatically think about the PT boats of John F. Kennedy fame. And well, we're much smaller than the PT boats, and we don't have torpedoes. It's a 50-foot long vessel made of sturdy aluminum, able to stop BBs at least. But we had a gun mount above the pilot house with twin 50 caliber machine guns, a piggyback mortar on the fantail that had a single 50 caliber mounted on top of it. And we also had small arm weaponry, so shotguns, small arms, 45s, rifles, etc.
So you're saying that it would stop a BB, so somebody's AK-47 or their equivalent of a 50 cal or 30 millimeter would go right through it, like it wasn't even there.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And a lot of your missions were at night. Is that, if I remember
right?
Well,
no, our mission, Swift Boats were part of Operation Market Time, Task Force 115. And our mission was to patrol the 1,200-mile long coastline of the Republic of Vietnam. I was stationed in what they call the I Corps, which is the northernmost sector of 4 war sectors of Vietnam. I was in a place called Chu Lai, which is south of Da Nang, the large harbor in northernmost South Vietnam, if you will. And our mission was to patrol the coastline, inspecting fishing junks, because as innocent as they may have looked or appeared, they often carried contraband for the Viet Cong. They often transported enemy soldiers, camouflaged as fishermen, from one position to another. In many cases, these fishermen were forced into carrying these supplies or carrying troops from one point to another. Because if they didn't, of course, their families back in the village would suffer the consequences. So that was our primary mission, and we were the last line of defense along the shore. The outer barriers of the coastal area, the 12-mile territorial line, was patrolled by the larger seagoing vessels, the destroyers, the minesweepers. Further in were the Coast Guard cutters, what they were known as WPBs. And of course, then I said the last line was the swift boats from the shoreline to about maybe 3 miles out. It doesn't sound like a very long distance, but when you get out there and you look at the map and you say, wow, that is a good distance, 3 to 4 miles. So that was our duty.
I see over your left shoulder your book, Skunk Alpha. Why don't you pull that up so we can show that to the audience, if you could, or
Yeah.
unless you want sitting in front of them.
Let me see if we can manage this a little bit, Red.
Okay, so that Skunk Alpha is the boat that's in. That's not your Swift boat that's on the front cover.
That is correct. This is the vessel that we captured on July the 15th, 1967, as it attempted to deliver more than 90 tons of ammunition and supplies to the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army regulars operating in Quang Ngai province in the northern sector of South Vietnam.
Are you talking about any kind of vessel that can be that you're intercepting? And these may look like harmless junks, but isn't that a pretty hazardous duty to flag one down, to go over there and actually inspect inside their vessel? It gives me kind of jitters just thinking about what if somebody pops up with an RPG or something like that, and boy, you're toast.
Absolutely. I thank God that my age of 20 years old at the time left me a little bit ignorant of those facts. Otherwise, I would have really been more scared about the situation we were being involved in. Nonetheless, it was when we knew we were going to engage that vessel, I knew there was going to be bullets flying, and yes, it did set me back a bit. But what happened, Red, is that you know yourself, you were a an officer aboard one of those aircraft, those surveillance aircraft, and it happens that one of these aircraft spotted this vessel heading towards the coast on July the 11th, late afternoon on July the 11th of 1967. And quickly it was identified as a potential enemy contact at sea. It was carrying no flag of country origin. It had no radar. It camouflaged its decks. They had cargo boxes above deck, and they had fishing nets strewn on top. And so they thought that they would be able to sneak their way into the land. When the aircraft went down and, as you know quite well, manned their rigging stations to take observations on this contact, the trawler went dead in the water. And once the plane went back up into the clouds and made believe they were just leaving it and not wanting to take any further action, the trawler made a 180 and turned back out to sea. Eventually, it went out about possibly 300 plus miles away from the coast of Vietnam and anchored behind the Paracel Islands for a couple of days. Then eventually it came back into towards the coast, where by that time there was a four vessel intercept task group that was created. The Wilhoit, the destroyer, the Wilhoit, the gunboat, the USS Gallup, Coast Guard cutter by the name of the Point Orient, and then we were selected from amongst a number of swift boats in patrol along the coast, because it was destined, apparently based on the track that it was taking, it was going to be coming in at the Batangan Peninsula, which is in Quang Ngai province, and there's a river that's at the tip of the peninsula, a river called the Song Sa Ki, the Sa Ki River, and that's where we finally engaged the vessel after it failed to respond to speaker systems. It was in the dead of night, as a matter of fact. It was 15 minutes after midnight. And so it was the darkness of the moon. The Coast Guard cutter blasted, "Give up your arms. We've been waiting for you. We know you've been here. You are coming this way. There's no escape." But it ignored it. It ignored warning shots. And then finally, as it was about maybe 2 miles from the river mouth, my boat officer screamed to the commanding officer in charge of the operation that I got one fast moving contact moving fast towards the river mouth. Request permission to go after and get it. And the Coast Guard cutter, the skipper, he yells out, "Affirmative, same drink, Delta November." That was our call sign. And says, "That's your contact. Let's go get him." And I get chills every time I remember. I was standing next to Mr. Bergen, our boat officer, and he says, "I'm on my way." And so then that's when it started. We just started engaging. We came to within 75 yards of each other, exchanging machine gun fire, and so our boatswain mate, the lead petty officer Bobby Don Carver, fired a white phosphorus mortar round, 81 millimeter mortar round into the port side pilot house door and blew all the controls, and it ran aground at the mouth of the Saki River.
We called them infiltrator trawlers when we were out flying. And our mission was to identify them because we wanted to stop the munitions going south. And if we'd fly by one and we thought it was an infiltrator trawler, I think we had 7 different hull types that we looked at that point in time. Of course, I'm flying there a couple of years after you're done. But our whole mission was to find them. And if we found them, you back off about 15 miles, climb up a little bit so he can't see you, can't hear you, and you just keep him on radar until it could be turned over. So you call it in, and if there was a surface set nearby that could pick up and maintain him on radar without being seen, great. Sometimes we turned it over to a submarine. Sometimes we turned it over to another aircraft. And so that was a routine when we were doing it. However, as I understand it, yours is one of the first actual combat captures of a infiltrator trawler, because I know after a while, the ones that we tracked, they were blown out of the water by an OV-10 or somebody. They weren't even allowed the opportunity to get in.
An interesting thing, Red, and let me mention to the viewers, the Skunk Alpha. Skunk in the Navy, an unidentified contact at sea is called a skunk, at least at that time. I don't know what it is in today's Navy, but it was called a skunk. And the first contact of the day after midnight, it was labeled Alpha, followed by Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and so on. So that's where the title of the book comes from, Capturing Skunk Alpha. But yes, that was our mission, and it was an interesting event. But so go on.
You got recognized by the Vietnam government for that capture. Is that correct?
Yes, at that time we weren't aware of it, but we were ordered to the base in Da Nang. We had to go north about 50, 60 miles. We were supposed to wear our dress white uniforms, and there was going to be an award ceremony of some sorts. And Premier Key and Chief of State Nguyen Van Thieu, they personally congratulated and decorated us with the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry for the capture of this enemy ship. It was a huge, huge success. I don't know if I mentioned to you earlier that back in October of 21, I believe it was, I was contacted by fellow Swiftboat veteran friends from our association, and they had received word that the Hanoi TV was looking for me. And I found that rather odd. Is how, first of all, how'd they get my name, and what's their interest in all this? And I kind of hesitated. Well, being North Vietnam, a communist nation, I said, well, let's see what's going on. And what it was is that one of the major TV news hosts from Vietnam, a young lady, she contacted me and she wanted to interview me specifically about this trawler incident, the swift boat incident. And as it turned out, while I was being interviewed, she pulled up pictures of a Vietnamese naval officer apparently, and then other pictures of two naval enlisted men, but in their current age. So like they were at my age, and we put on your uniforms of the day back then. And she says, "Do you recognize these people?" And I said, "No, I don't know who they are." She says, "Well, this is the skipper, the captain of the trawler that you captured." And wow, I was shocked. This is because, and then the two gentlemen there, they were part of the crew as well. So there were three survivors of that battle that we had in the open sea with this individual trawler. Uh, I thought that with the explosion that took place in that pilot house, I couldn't see how anyone had survived that. But apparently, what happened, Red, is that these vessels were like kamikaze type vessels. If they felt that they weren't able to succeed in their mission, they'd flip a switch, a delay mechanism switch, and then abandon ship and make it to shore. And then at a certain time, as the Americans or whoever were trying to approach the vessel, the entire cargo would explode because this trawler, Skunk Alpha, was carrying 2,046 pounds of TNT strategically placed around the hulls of this vessel. So, I mean, that cargo had explosives, it had C4, um, thousands of pounds of C4 and Claymore mines and all sorts of explosives. I wouldn't be here talking to you if that had happened, but I believe Carver's round hit the pilot house and destroyed the mechanism, and thus saved our lives as well in the process.
Okay, why don't we move a little bit further into your authoring journey?
Okay.
Obviously, this happened in '67. You have an interesting story you told me about how the genesis of this book happened. So, why did you become an author? Let's talk about that because that's pretty important in your life. So let's go down that road first, and then we'll talk about the writing and the other things
Yes.
that happened.
In short, Bobby Don Carver is the man who fired that killing round, bringing the trawler down. He lost his life 5 months later on December the 6th, 1967, just two and a half miles from where we captured that trawler along the My Lai shoreline. And we were devastated by it. Uh, Basically, we drank ourselves to sleep that night when we came back to port. The following night, I felt his spirit. I felt a cold, cold pressure on my chest as I lay in my bunk. And I eventually realized that it was him. I felt that presence. It was chilling. Got over that, came home, thought that I had survived the war without being wounded physically, but mentally I developed a fear I felt his spirit around me everywhere I went, especially if I went behind closed doors, in particular the bathroom. If I closed the door, I'd hurry to get out of there because I felt his spirit around me. Taking the shower, I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't close my eyes because I'd see his bloody face in front of me. And it haunted me for years until one day on an island in Greece, I had an epiphany. I saw a similar fishing boat from a local village in the village of Limnos, the island of Limnos in Greece. And it flashed back to me again, all these different things. And I questioned him, Boats, that was his nickname. Boats, what are you doing? Why are you haunting me so much? And the thought eventually came to me. Says he wants me to write our story, our swift boat story. Came home, and then eventually that's what I did. And when I finally, after months, more time spent researching, receiving documents, confidential, secret documents from the government, etc., uh, I actually started writing the story. And when I did that, those episodes, those haunting episodes stopped. And then it has taken me more than 4 decades to write this book. A number of personal matters that have gotten in the way. I served years with the directorship of the Swift Boat Sailors Association. And so it's been a long struggle. Even Hurricane Harvey tried to knock me out, but I kept writing my story as well. But finally, thank God, the book was published on June 27th, 2023.
This is a hard book to write because you're bringing in situations, locations, uh, the cultural aspects of things, people, conversations, to the best of your memory, and you're melding it all together. And you are not necessarily a writer prior to this, so I can imagine it's over and over and over and over. Oh, I need to add that. Yeah, I can write this. So I can just see the dilemma as you're starting to put this thing together. Where do you start? Uh, Tell us a little bit about the actual writing and what happened as you were creating this book.
Well, again, you're correct. I had no ambitions. In high school, my main focus was playing football and chasing girls, and not necessarily in that order. But no, writing. I never had any aspirations to become a writer. But given that epiphany that I had in Greece, I had a commitment. I made a promise. I made a promise to the bosun mate, Bobby Don Carver, to tell his story, to tell our crew's story, PCF 79, and to tell the overall swift boat story, in which 50 swift boat sailors lost their lives during the war. But I had no idea of how to write a book. I knew that I had my mother's saved my letters, a total of 79 letters I wrote home. So I built up a chronology from that. I built a chronology of the time in the United States, the troublesome time we were experiencing, the race riots, etc., the time during the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. I put all these chronologies together. I merged them and tried to develop some type of a story. I knew I wanted to write the history, the swift boat history. So along the way, I decided that, nonfiction works are typically rather dry. They're of historical nature and they're a dry read. I wanted the reader to, you know, be in my shoes. I wanted the reader to visualize, to feel what I felt, to experience what I saw. And so I put a twist in it. I used a little bit of a fictional approach to this. I gave my characters voice. I wasn't there with the tape recorder recording what they said, but I took all of these incidents and the characters involved in these incidents, and I gave them voice to make the event come alive to the reader. And I believe I succeeded in that um, because, in fact, our crew, we were a bunch of characters from the get go. I mean, we had nicknames like Boats, Lord Mort, Porky, Gunner, and mine was Bean. And so we were a mixed bag of individuals and very colorful. So there was, and of course, in other cases where other trawler incidents, you mentioned that we were the first. No, we weren't the first to capture a vessel, but you are correct in saying that this is the first one that was captured intact. All the others were gunned down, made it to the beach. They self-destroyed themselves or burned down to the keel, but ours was the first. So that's what I did. I gave my characters voice, and I believe that brings out the emotions that I experienced during that period of time in Vietnam.
Okay, so you get the book written, and I'm assuming at this point in time you need some kind of editing help. How did that part of the journey go?
Well, I had an agent for a short time, and of course, I was far from being finished with the book. Back in the old days, I understood that publishers used to give the author an advance uh, before the book was even finished, oftentimes before he even started the book. But in this case, no. The agent says you need to finish the book, and then we'll talk. So that's what happened. And he says what you need to do is, mm, if you want to attract a traditional publisher, you need to have your book polished as best as possible. You need a professional editor. So I went out and I searched. He provided me uh, names of those editors that he had worked with in the past with different other authors. And I did my research. I looked into them, and I found one, and I went with him. It wasn't cheap. It cost a pretty penny, but I'm very happy for the end result. Long story short, to be honest with you, I was never advised in the process of learning about writing. I was never advised that memoirs are in the range of 95,000 words to 100,000 words. Preferably keep it short at 95,000. When my editor was received my manuscript, I had 150,000 words read. So that cost an additional amount of money to go through and cut it down to 95,000. But it was worth it. It was very well worth it. And then once I had the opportunity, Red, to be associated with the folks at the Vietnam Center at Lubbock, Texas. They're the largest depository of Vietnam artifacts and documents outside of the National Archives in Washington. And with his assistance, uh, it opened the door to Texas Tech University Press. And that's, I had been trying to reach different agents, and no one ever answered my call. And I was fortunate one day to have the idea cross my mind. Hey, why don't you contact the director over at Texas Tech at the Vietnam Center? And so that's what happened. That's where I wound up getting the door open at Texas Tech University Press.
But you mentioned right roughly about 95,000 words. But your intention was you wanted traditionally published, and you wanted opportunities for whatever else might come out of that. Now, sometimes you write a memoir and it's just for the family. You want to capture those thoughts. I had one client that it ended up, we started, when I looked at it first, it was 867 pages. And that was not 6 by 9, that was in 8.5 by 11.
Oh,
And to get that down into something manageable, I think we ended up about 455 pages when we were done, but over 100 photographs and whatever. So depending on what the nature of your book that you're writing as to who your audience is and what you expect, I mean, it's probable to assume that you could have gotten a movie rights out of this. It's probable to assume that you really wanted the traditional publishing as opposed to self-publishing, because I know that book was ready to publish long before you got involved with Texas Tech. And so you had a mission in life, and let's kind of go down that road for a minute. As you chose to go a certain way, and regardless of what it cost and the time involved, you stayed the course.
yes, sir. That it was my commitment, my promise to the boatswain to get our story told. Red, there's been a void in the pages of Vietnam War history for the reasons that you always see newscasts of army troops whenever there's a report something has to do with Vietnam. They'll always flash back with individuals from the field or the bombings over North Vietnam, etc. But hardly ever you see anything about the Navy's involvement. You know, it's been said often that the U.S. lost the Vietnam War. Well, the Navy won its share of battles, and I believe it's time to be able to fill that void. And I think capturing Skunk Alpha will make a good shot at filling that void, because it's the Swifties, over 3,000 officers and enlisted men that served on Swift boats deserve to have their legacy left behind for future generations. So yes, it I knew, and I have, quite candidly, this is not for any so gratification, pat on the back here. I have spent a great deal of money in this project. It's a labor of love, basically. It's a commitment to my fellow swiftboat sailors to help leave our story for future generations.
Would you like to read from your book?
Well, I'd love to. I don't know how long we have, but that first chapter is something that's you might you tell me when to stop if you want.
Well, why don't
But
we
the
go
first
for a couple minutes, and I will.
First chapter is called Spirit. A
Go.
cold, heavy pressure pulsated on my chest. Fearing its origin, I lay motionless on my bunk, waiting. Anguished moans echoed from a distance through the still night air, mimicking hideous yowls of prowling cats in the middle of the stormy night, the kind that make you envision zombie children wailing outside beneath your bedroom window. The pressure intensified. I sank deeper into my rack as the muffled moans drew closer. Sweat trickled from my fevered flesh, only to be overwhelmed by a morbid chill that made me jerk and twitch to near convulsion. It was a force too powerful to challenge. I couldn't break free. The circumstances pointed to demonic possession. My mind raced aloud with possible explanations. Am I dreaming? Is it a nightmare? Yes, a nightmare, the only logical answer. But why can't I awake and regain control? I struggled to move, but my mental commands drew no physical response. I lost control over my body. I, I do, I'm doomed, but to what? Horror? Hell? Death? What? My pounding heart seemed to be galloping up my throat in a desperate attempt to escape the terror. Piercing puffs of frosty air jabbed me at random, causing isolated areas of goosebumps to surface and fade almost at once. They evolved into a concentrated bone chilling wave that slid the length of my scrawny frame, beginning at the bottom of my feet and raising every hair on end as it reached, as it inched its way up to the top of my head for what seemed an eternity.
It's a very emotional start to that book. I've read it, and it does capture on the front end because you were haunted by things, and not being a writer, I think your ability to, as you say, a timeline of lying in those experiences that just keep coming at you. I think you did an exceptionally good job of capturing the essence of why did you write that book, because you're trying to get rid of those things and they were just constantly coming at you until you were over in Greece and now the reason is there. So uh, the typical, as I understand it, traditional publishing doesn't do a lot that it used to do 10 years ago. And so you got to go out and find an agent. You got to go out and find a publisher. You got to, and they not only have your intellectual property in their hands, but they also have other things contractually that may end up down the road. Well, one of the ones I noticed it when you were speaking years ago before the book actually got published. The book was called Skunk Alpha.
Yes.
Got to Texas Tech. They changed the title of the book. They didn't change the cover, but they changed the title. Talk about that, please.
Well, of course, I learned along the way that you need to have, now that we're in the social media world of things, you need to have a platform. So I established my platform with, uh, at that time, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere that I could tell the Swift boat story and put words out. Advanced PR, I guess you can call it. In my own ignorant PR way, unprofessional PR way, I thought that's a start. It's amazing how it happens, Red, because gosh, even way early on, I don't know if you recall on Shepherd Street here in Houston, there was the theater. I forget the name of that theater, Shepherd in Alabama, the Alabama Theater, as a matter of fact. Well, they converted it to a bookstore. I think it was a book stop. And I went over there and I said, listen, I've got a book. And at that time, they were having local authors do readings of their work in progress. So I was fortunate enough to have a book reading there, and it was funny to see. I mean, it was funny. It was, it was very interesting. I'll never forget. My name was up on the billboard up there when the theater billboard that's up in front of the theater. It says Raul Herrera. So I said, yeah, I was very fortunate to have that. So every chance I got, I did readings. As a matter of fact, I did another reading at the bookstop. I believe it was a bookstop at the Galleria area. They're close to what's now the Container Store. There was another bookstore there that I did a reading, and I had sent a note to Channel 11 that I was going to be doing a reading. And for some reason, I started doing my reading. And lo and behold, there's cameras from Channel 11 filming me, and they put it on the news. Well, Sylvan Rodriguez, God rest in peace, uh, he got word of this, and he invited me to an interview at the station. And at that time, I had all my, in Vietnam, back in those days, we had Super 8 cameras, and I had put them all together in one large reel. And I told him, I said, listen, I've got film footage from Vietnam. If you're interested in looking to see if you can use it for the interview, hey, that'd be great. And I said, I also happen to have the actual audio tape of the communication between vessels during the actual battle between us and Skunk Alpha. And so, yeah, bring that as well. So they put it all together, and they interviewed me, and they had me on a first Sunday show. Silver Rodriguez had a Channel 11 CBS affiliate, had a Sunday show, and I came out in that program. Well, approaches 1990. This is before 1995. By the way, in that interview, I also had the pleasure of having my good friend, Medal of Honor recipient Roy Benavides. He also was helping me along the way because he had published a book, Medal of Honor. And so he was there, part of the interview in one segment. So then after that, I was already board director with the Swiftboat Sailors Association, and we were going to have a reunion and a dedication of two swift boats that were brought back from Panama and refurbished, PCF number one and PCF number two. And there was a big event in Washington D.C. PCF two was going to be dedicated to a college in the Hamptons in Virginia for a maritime type of vessel, and the PCF one was going to become a static display at the museum in Washington D.C. And so I called the folks at the Channel 11 once again and said, listen, we're having this. And so they sent a camera crew followed me up to Washington, D.C. for the ceremony. And so I've, again, every chance that you get to promote your work, a lot of people say that no, your website has to be it's got to be your author website, your author website. No, it's not about me. It's about the story. So my website is Skunk Alpha. It's not Raul Herrera. And so you need to be able to. In my case, I wanted the story to take the lead, not me. I'm just a messenger. So that's part of the work that I've been doing along the way, and it continues to grow.
You do speaking gigs, you sign books. People can buy the books on Amazon, they can buy them on your website. So
Yes,
why
sir.
don't you pass on the information to our audience? How can people get in touch with you if they want to get your book or book you for a gig or whatever?
Yes. Well, one thing I can recommend is that quite easily, if you Google Skunk Alpha, you can get to my website there. You can get to my YouTube channel. If you Google capturing Skunk Alpha, you'll get links to all the bookseller sites on the internet, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. If you continue scrolling in that process, you'll come across a an image, a red rectangular image. It says Chulai, I believe. And that is a link to my book trailer. I have close to a 4-minute book trailer that's very interesting, and that'll tell the reader a great deal. And again, you can go to the website that you're showing now as well. But if you want to write to me, I welcome folks to contact me, and they can contact me at Raul, Raul, at skunkalpha.com. Skunk and then ALPHA. Raul at skunkalpha.com. And I'd love to hear from anyone that's interested in learning more about the Swift Boat story.
And for our audio audience, I know there's many ways of spelling Raul, but it's Raul, just to be on the safe side.
Correct.
Raul, I really and truly appreciate your time today. Appreciate the journey that you gave to our audience, and I look forward to seeing you again. We need to do another lunch or something, and so I will reach out to you separately on that one. But
looking forward to it, Red, and thanks again for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and join us again next week, same time, same bat channel, same bat station, and we will, I guess, end the event today right now. Thank you very much. Bye now.
USA Global TV and Radio, in partnership with Dr. Jacalyn LLC, present Amazon #1 best-selling author Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is a certified life, career, and executive coach who teaches people how to listen at an elevated level through her courses and her books. Dr. Kerbeck teaches her clients how to open their hearts and express themselves through their creative genius. In her children's book series, The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, The Listening Mentor, Dr. Kerbeck teaches children and their families how to listen at an elevated level. Dr. Kerbeck has worked with clients across the world to guide them in how to express themselves and communicate at a highly effective level. Join our team of elevated listeners so you can listen without judgment, without providing a solution, without interruption, and without stealing the stage. To order your books today, go to drjacalyn.com or Amazon.
Hello, I'm children's author Diane Floyd Bain, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and Radio because I love positive messages, and who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.
This program has been brought to you in part by Zane Carson Caruth, etiquette and protocol expert, international award-winning author, television show host, and philanthropist. Thank you to Zane, our official diamond sponsor for USA Global TV and Radio in partnership with E360 TV. Zane is the author of The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever, as well as many other children's books. She's also the television host of Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living, seen on USA Global TV and Radio.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Caruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
To learn more about Zane, contact her through her website, zanecaruth.com. ZANECARRUTH.com. Order Zane's books and merchandise. Contact her about being a keynote speaker at your next event.